And good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 83. As always, I'm going to start off with a bit of a tune.
Thousands of marching feet, all through the land, drummers and sappers, oars and flute, a mighty band, through the colours, follow wherever they go. Loyal the hearts that got them well, 'twas ever so, march, 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 roll the road, roll the heights, and make the bagpipes roll. Roll the road, roll the heights, and make the bagpipes roll. Glory for some and the chance for all, till we come again to Lord, till we come again to England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, send forth the sons, children of empire seas beyond, stand to the guns, follow the colours, follow wherever they go, loyal the hearts that got them well, 'twas ever so, march, 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 roll the road, roll the height, and make the bagpipes roll. Roll the road, roll the heights, and make the bagpipes roll. Glory for some and the chance for all, till we come again to Lord, till we come again to What's in the wind and out what's toward? Who cares a bit? Marching orders, we're on the way to settle it. Follow the colours, follow wherever they go. Loyal the hearts that got them well, 'twas ever so, march, 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 roll the drums and roll the dice, some remain. Weed it not. Something's wrong to put it right. The song is locked. The song is locked. Follow the colors. Follow where they go. Where they go. Oil the hearts that got them where 'twas careless, 'twas careless. March, march, march. March, march, march. Run, run, turn on the pipes, and make the bagpipes roll. Run, run, turn on the pipes, and make the bagpipes roll. Glory for some and the charms for all. Till we come again to love, till we come again to
And that was a rousing start to our stream this evening from a Sir Edward Elgar tune written in 1907, Follow the Drum. Follow the Colours. And it comes from an excellent channel called Patriotic Archive. We get quite a lot of our music from on this channel. Good evening to my guests. How are you going tonight, gentlemen?
Yeah, good.
Sorry, John, and what should I call you with that name there in Cyrillic, mate?
Is it just Mitch in Cyrillic?
Oh, it's Mitch in Cyrillic, is it? All right. So, all right, Mitch, John, how are you going?
Good evening. Going well.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Same usual grind.
All right. I'm going to start us off for first subjects for this evening, and I think I'm going to start with John because he hasn't been on for a while. So, John, you got anything you would like to bring up as a first topic?
Hello. No, I think we're going to cover anything I want to really talk about. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything really exceptional going on at the minute, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's not a big news week. I mean, like I was running through the Bias Brainwashing Corporation, which as usual is just entirely about immigrants, feminism, and gay LGBTQ people, and that's just about most of what they're covering. Really.
There is one thing I want to talk about. There is one thing I do want to talk about. Archbishop Justin Welby declared this week that he will not seek to punish Church of England churches that go for gay marriage, basically.
So he's going to support gay marriage, in other words.
I mean, effectively, yes.
Ah, well, it's very Christian of him, I suppose. It's not in the Bible, though, is it?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that aren't in the Bible that Church of England isn't very good at. I mean, homosexuality being one of them. Women preachers. I mean, the Bible's pretty emphatic on what women should do in church, which is basically be quiet.
Yeah, I don't know. I look, you know, I just look at the Church of England as almost lost, to be honest with you. I mean, I know there are some traditionalist church people, but you know.
Welby also said this week that the Pope is considered by most Anglicans to be the father of the church in the West, and I just thought, what on earth are you on about?
I bet Her Majesty the Queen was the Majesty the Queen pleased to hear that one, was she?
I did. It does just beg a belief. Like the guy is clearly, I don't know, some kind of plant. He's not.
You know, lefty communist, not an Archbishop of Canterbury. Man, I don't know. Like I said, I mean, the Catholic Church itself is not much better when you look at the current Pope. So,
Well, I mean, you say that. I mean, he's actually come out and said some things recently that we'd probably all actually agree with, on the subject of abortion in America and all that kind of stuff. So.
Oh yeah, fair enough. I just heard loads of lefty stuff that he was coming out with earlier.
Yeah, I think he's well known for that. But then, like I say, recently, maybe it's just by contrast to what we've got in the UK, but he's starting to sound a bit more Christian, dare I say it.
Yeah, not very difficult though, eh?
No.
I mean, maybe I'll come to the defense of the Pope here, and I can't believe I'm doing this, but I do often find that when he was criticised for saying things that were left of based, it often wasn't strictly true. It was often the media deliberately misconstruing what he'd said.
Okay.
But he is pushing back a little bit more now, I think, because he's got some opposition on his hands. But
maybe Mr. Welby is right, and he really is the father of the church in the West, given the Church of England seems to have so little direction from their Archbishop.
Well, didn't Prince Charles say that if he becomes king, he doesn't want to be defender of the faith; he wants to be defender of the faiths?
Well,
Plural.
I heard he was going to have a multi-faith coronation. Yes.
Well, that would kind of be very revolutionary, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it certainly would go against quite a few years of precedent, but
yeah, I like. Well, certainly going back to the Queen Elizabeth, I suppose.
Henry VIII was going against a few years of precedent as well, though. So I mean, he wouldn't be unique there.
But 500 years is quite a long time.
I mean, so is I mean, the best part of 800 years as well. But.
Yeah, true. I don't know. Dosastic Draco, I'll just mention this because I saw him doing this on Gab, talking about all the stuff that has gone on in Birmingham, which maybe Mitch will be interested in commenting on.
I thought Mitch was a Brummie. I could tell the accent anywhere.
I don't know if Mitch is actually a Brummie, but I know he comes from that part of the world.
I'm like a mix of Birmingham, mixed with Black Country.
He's brilliant. One of my people.
Well, if you look at the chat and look at Dosastic Draco, Mitch, you'll see he's doing some posts about various things that happened in Birmingham, including how the ball ring got its name and that kind of stuff. And I noticed he was doing that on Gab recently.
Yeah. I mean, the ball ring, I know who I got its name, but I didn't know as much information as Draco was putting out tonight.
So there you go. I just thought I'd mention it. All right. Have you got anything you'd like to bring up, Adamant, as a first topic?
Nothing really, though. There was an update to, I don't know if anyone remembers the FBI story I brought up last week about the FBI whistleblower.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and essentially, the FBI had a system of promoting and rewarding agents who targeted right-wing men, and most of their domestic violent extremism that they were investigating had nothing to do with terrorism, but they were like categorizing it as such to fit like the Biden administration's political quota. The FBI agents that didn't share the sort of quite left-wing belief system were sort of isolated and slowly getting fired off. Well, there was a bit of an update to this recently, which was, I don't know if any of you remember that case. I mean, this came out, that case of that senator that had been kidnapped, or there was a kidnapping plot against her, sorry. Whitmer, her name was. And well, the thing surrounding that was it turned out that it was kind of a case of entrapment, that like quite a few of the people doing the plot were all feds, and the ones that were left over kind of didn't really have that much to do it. So all those cases, even though they used it for the political points they wanted, when it came to the judicial cases, they were all just getting thrown out. I don't know if they all got thrown out, but most of them were thrown out.
Yeah, good. So it was
and-
basically the deep state pretending not to be the deep state.
I mean, there's a suggestion that a lot of this goes on, isn't there? Where they're basically like coming up against these random lonely people on the internet and sort of like goading them into to doing stuff that these people possibly wouldn't have done without the feds kind of planting the ideas in their heads and helping give them the wherewithal to go about it.
Yeah,
It's absolutely nonsense.
definitely.
Can
But
someone please? Sorry to interrupt you, Adam. Could I just ask, because I want to take this comment off the screen? How is the Queen related to the Prophet Muhammad? Although I've heard this many times, I don't see how she can be.
I know, or I think I'm correct to understand that all the males from Victoria's line onwards have been circumcised because Victoria believed she had some links to Judaism, but I'd not heard the Mohammedanism.
I never knew either of those things, to be honest with you. But there we go. So I mean, for viewers outside of the UK, circumcision is actually not all that common in the UK.
No,
I know it's very common in America. It's not common in Britain.
I'm sure it's common if you're a Jew, but most in the UK, it's pretty unheard of.
Yeah, you're like I'm not, you know. But anyway,
yeah, we don't tend to do genital mutilation in the UK, but
no,
I guess that's normal in America.
You have to just keep your dick clean, basically. You know?
Imagine washing your penis, eh?
Yeah, I know. Who would have thought such a thing? But anyway, John Commoner says that the person that Adam was talking about is Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
That's
right?
the one. Yeah. Right. So anyway, the thing that came out about this particular case was the chief special agent in charge of the Michigan office during that debacle, when that all happened, was also in charge of the FBI's field office operating in DC during both the January 6th happening and the resulting trial.
Oh yeah, so all these show trials that are going on in America at the moment. People who've been locked up for 2.5 years for basically not doing anything except getting into a building the police let them into.
Yeah,
the long march through the institutions.
Literally. Yeah, the slow and long march within the ribbon through the institutions. Yeah, but it's literally, you know, someone involved in these sorts of shenanigans before crops up again.
Yeah, what a surprise, eh? What a surprise.
I mean, imagine if you are like an FBI agent, though, and, you know, you're worried about your job. What's the quickest way to make some work is, you know, just find yourself a Discord full of weirdos and start planting suggestions in their head.
Yeah. Go online with a load of Nazi larpers and say, oh, we should do this, that, and the other, you know. But
I heard a rumor that the Uvalde shooter had a Fed in one of the Discords they were in. Do we know if that was true or?
Wouldn't surprise me at all.
I thought there were two of the recent shootings that went on in America where they may have even both been in the same Discord and were known to the same Feds. That was what I understood.
Right. Okay.
I just think.
But on the subject, feel free to join my Discord.
Don't worry, John. At the end, I'll ask you if you want to plug anything, mate. So you can plug your streams in your Discord.
Great.
And I will put a Discord link in the description after the show as well. So yeah, I just think that, you know, people go on about people on the right being a bit paranoid about who's a Fed and who glows in the dark and all this kind of stuff. It's not entirely unjustified.
They're out there.
Yeah, exactly.
They
really are. Yeah, me too. I'm a deep plant. Jesus, I don't know honestly, but yeah. Did you have anything else to add with that one, Armin, or anybody else?
No. I mean, there's been lots of happenings this week, but that stuck out to me because it was a follow-up. So
no worries. Mitch, did you have a first subject you wanted to bring up?
I think he's BRB.
Oh, is he? Okay, well, I will therefore start something which I know he might have a comment on. What did you gents think about the vile Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan and the non-event that then happened?
I think it was criminal of China to allow her to go back to the United States and upset the United States. And what a punishment, letting her go back, eh?
Yeah. I think you're not wrong. Dear. But I mean, not a lot happened really. I mean, the Chinese ran a number of naval regattas and air shows, and that's about what they did. Really.
Some fireworks.
Yeah, I mean, I was dot watching on the old plane on the old Sky Scanner, and
with
I
your
was like,
fingers
"Oh,
crossed.
Yep, go on. But no, then she landed. It was all fine. I was like, disappointed.
Big.
Oh, look,
I
I would have only cared about the aircrew on the airplane. I wouldn't have cared about her at all.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I don't understand what China's going to do from this. Like, how do you back down this escalation they've moved up to? Like,
I don't think China needs to do too much, to be honest. I mean, within the next decade or two, they're set to overtake America as the largest economy, aren't they? And yeah, they've got problems, just like America's got problems. But I think America's going to have bigger problems sooner than China is.
I still think China might lose in a naval air war in the South China Sea, and it's probably quite wise of them not to do anything. I'm not saying they would lose, but they might lose.
Well, they're in a kind of shitty position, aren't they? Because their demographics means that the clock's essentially against them if they leave it too many decades. But they also need longer to arm up, and they need to leave it longer for America to decline some more.
They're going for the economic victory in Civ.
Yeah.
That could also be true, but I just think if you look at their shipbuilding programs and particularly their aircraft carrier building programs and so on, in 10 years the Chinese Navy is going to be a hell of a lot stronger. But of course, what they risk is that Western navies might also be stronger by then. But there's no sign of that at the moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to sort of talk out of place because it's not my field, but I kind of spent some time with a friend going through. I mean, this is going to sound so fucking autistic. Going through US naval strength, and I was quite shocked at how old sort of most of their fleet is. But they're bringing in a lot of new stuff now. Like over the next 10 years, a lot of that old stuff will be getting replaced. So
the trouble, Adam, is that they were building stuff like this littoral combat ship, which was this small aluminium thing, which basically didn't work very well. And half of them are being scrapped now, and the other half will be scrapped as quickly as the Americans can get rid of them. The Americans, the actual naval guys, never liked them anyway. So they're doing that. America has fallen behind in terms of very fast missiles. And the Chinese debate on this must be like how quickly they get more aircraft carriers and how quickly the US fleet gets updated.
It must be remembered that very crucially, America is leading the way in tranny troops.
Yeah, that's going to really help them. That's going to really help them. The thing that should frighten the Chinese, to be honest, is
coming up against the tranny troops.
No.
Psychological warfare.
Yeah.
What's under their kilt? You never know.
Yeah. Fair enough. I see you guys are being humorous, but no. What should worry the Chinese is actually the American hunter-killer SSN submarines, which will make an awful lot of their warships go boom for no apparent reason.
Do you think it's going to? We've seen with Ukraine that when the rubber meets the road, the West will do anything but get directly involved with boots on the ground against a near peer.
I think Taiwan is very different because if China takes Taiwan militarily, their next objective will be Japan, shortly followed thereafter possibly by Australia in one way or another. So I really do think it's very different. I mean, there's a reason that the recently assassinated Japanese politician bloke Abe,
Shinzo Abe,
who was talking about constantly saying, look, Japan needs to defend Taiwan. Not because Japan really cares about Taiwan, although they ran it for many years. like Taiwan's never really been part of mainland China. That's a Chinese lie. But the not only because of that, but because Japan knows damn well that the Chinese who detest and hate the Japanese because of historical reasons will most definitely be gunning for Japan after Taiwan if they manage to take it militarily.
I mean, I kind of think that the big indicator of whether anything will happen will be whether America can actually build the domestic chip market that they're trying to do now, which I'm pretty sure they will fail at. But if they can do it, then their requirement for Taiwan will sink quite a lot.
Possibly, but I don't think that's the big deal, to be honest. I mean, I really do think it's more geopolitical than that. I think it's more about if China manages to take Taiwan, their next object is most definitely going to be Japan, and probably secondarily Australia.
What permanent defences does the US and allies have in the area?
Oh, they have they maintain a fleet and a couple of quite big bases on Japan, and then there's also the big base on Guam where my son was last year when he was with HMS Queen Elizabeth.
But I guess what I'm saying is, how quickly could China neutralise Taiwan before there was any sort of real response?
All right. The Western nations, particularly the Americans, can respond pretty quickly in terms of naval and air forces. And any war in the South China Sea is going to be primarily a naval and air war. It's not going to be a land war.
Of course, yeah.
No, you might get like little islands and stuff changing hands, but you won't get big battles with divisions and stuff on land. So it's not going to be like Ukraine. But quite quickly, the Americans can respond with naval and air forces. And like I said to someone on Discord last week, if China does try and invade Taiwan, you can bet your bottom dollar there'll be a Royal Navy carrier task force on the way out there within about 15 days at most.
I guess, but I think what I'm getting at is a bit like with Ukraine. I think if Russia had done more quickly what the West asserts it was setting out to do, the avenue for response narrows quite quickly. And so, same with Taiwan. If Taiwan is, for want of a better term, alpha striked, and it's taken out within a few hours. Because
the Chinese can't really do that, John, because like if they want to take the place over, they can't really afford to slaughter large numbers of civilians there.
Well, I mean,
so that's going to be a problem. And
I think the Chinese will do whatever they like, to be honest.
Well,
they do with their own people.
Yeah, they might, but I have my doubts that they'll want to slaughter large numbers of civilians, to be honest. And the other thing with Taiwan is the place it's very built up in some areas because it's got big population for a small island. But in the middle of it is a massive mountain range.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not easy to attack. And as George correctly pointed out in the chat, the Taiwanese armed forces are pretty well equipped and quite competent. So it wouldn't be a walkover, put it that way.
What kind of volume is
Taiwan, and the geography is way worse than most people realise.
Okay. Yeah, it
like
really
the
is.
mountain range actually runs right the way out to the sea in places. It's as an invader, it'd be a pretty horrific place to have to deal with.
Yeah, it really would be. I totally agree, Armin. Don't underestimate the ability of the Taiwanese to defend themselves.
I'm not saying that. I mean, I'm just saying it's like David and Goliath, right? But less biblical.
Well, yeah, but you can only land so many troops on a relatively small island, and like I said, the bits that are not mountainous, and the mountainous bits are mostly covered in forest as well to make it doubly bad.
But I guess what I'm saying is, unless the West is willing to engage in an all-out war, and if it wanted to do what it's done with Ukraine, which is just supply and arm the locals and not risk getting dragged into potentially nuclear conflict, what avenue is it going to have available to it to do that? I mean, how many air bases are there? It's not.
It can't fight on its own. Obviously
no, and
but I don't think that's going to happen.
It's not got borders with friendly countries. It is an island, right? So I don't know. unless the West really is willing to go toe to toe with China over that island and risk nuclear war potentially, I just don't see it.
I don't think you're going to be risking nuclear war because you're not talking about an existential threat to either country. Like China isn't going to get, if China doesn't take Taiwan, that's not the end of China. And equally, if the West doesn't manage to defend Taiwan, that's not the end of the USA. So it's not an existential threat, and I don't think you're going to get nuclear weapons.
Yeah, so I would argue that given that it's not an existential threat, what is the USA actually going to get involved there?
Well, listen, I think if they don't, they're going to lose all credibility, particularly after recent defeats in Afghanistan, and you could very much argue in Ukraine, which I'm sure Mitch will talk about in a minute.
I genuinely believe we are seeing the end of the American empire.
I think we're seeing the end of the beginning of the end of it, yes, but I don't think it's any more than that.
I think we'll start to see just how big a paper tiger they are and just how unwilling they are to use what they have.
All right.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, they have the capacity to win this quite easily. That's always been the irritating thing to me. They have all the capacity in the world to fix a lot of these issues, and the
USA has never been willing to act in the capacity as an empire state. It's always wanted to do. It's never been willing to do what England did.
Yeah, they don't want to directly rule places. That's true,
and that's why I think they will fail ultimately.
Possibly.
Richard Ford in chat said, "Totally disagree. We're seeing the expanded power of the American empire." Yeah, when you said all this is coming to an end, part of me was like, "Oh, I find your optimism disgusting. This isn't going to end."
Listen, I think we are seeing the beginning of the end of it. And largely, as you just said, Adam, for self-inflicted wounds.
Oh, it could go on for 1,000 years. Look how long the Roman Empire lasted, despite being basically dead on its feet.
American hegemony is not going to last 1,000 years. That much I will guarantee. But anyway, Spindly in the chat says Taiwan has 24 million, England has 55 million. I think England's about 65 million these days.
I think it's closer to 70, but quite how many of those would pick up arms for England, I don't know.
Oh, very few of them, because most of that growth above about 56 million has been mass immigration.
It's actually above about 50, Iron Duke.
Yeah, well, look, I just remember when I was a kid, Britain's population went from 54 million when I was about 7, which was about 1970 something, to about 56 million by the time I was a teenager.
If you look into the stats, you'll find that approximately 20 million people in the UK today are either foreign-born or the descendants of foreign-born within the last century.
Yeah, true enough.
It's a significant part of our population. Significant.
Right, fair enough. But I just wanted to say to Spindly saying Taiwan is about 24 million people. That is only very slightly less than the number of people in Australia, by the way. I think Australia is 26 million these days.
Yeah,
so it's not insignificant.
Yeah, I know Australia went up to 25 million, way ahead of schedule because of mass immigration. So.
Again, yes, just because of mass immigration, all Western nations and also Japan have below replacement birth rates.
We've got to pay for the pensions, guys.
Yeah. Sorry. Anyway, I really wanted to segue into Mitch because I know Mitch wanted to say something about the China stuff and what have you.
Yeah, on one hand, I'm sure people will agree when I say we hate the West, but we also hate China because we don't like CCP.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, and it's just I'm looking at all this. I'm thinking the only winner from this really is Russia because let's face it, they can then market themselves as the only true competitor against the American empire. They can say, "Oh, look at us! We're the only ones who are willing to go balls to the wall in terms of going into Ukraine." Meanwhile, China craps itself at the idea of invading Taiwan. That's what Putin can probably say to let's say when he goes to the third world and tries to get them to go to his side. against the West and against China.
Speaking of the third world, I don't know if anyone's seen that India have been increasing its gold reserves. I think 36% in the last year or two, something like that.
But not their toilets.
Well, they might have some
Sorry.
gold in Kazis now.
Sorry, I couldn't resist that. I beg your pardon.
Yeah,
you can't beat an efficient hole in the ground.
Yes.
Yeah, on the topic of America, I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag in that, yeah, they are declining, because, I mean, you can't really look at America in its current state and think it's doing well. But on the other hand, they have been using the Ukrainian thing to pretty much just destroy the influence that Germany and France have in Europe. Like, Germany and France were like challenging American dominance in Europe, in the EU, and then the Ukraine thing happened. US pretty much coaxed the Germans and French into sanctioning Russia. That's wrecked their economies, and America solidified its influence in Europe. So it's
interesting. To what you say, it's interesting that as Russian gas and natural resources have ceased flowing into Europe, America started increasing its exports, shall we say, thus, as you say, like kind of placing itself as you need us and you have to buy from us because you can't buy from Russia now.
Yeah, you take, for example, natural gas from America that flows into France. France used to, because they normally depend on nuclear, but the problem is the nuclear power plants haven't been performing well this year. And the uranium that they use, they get from Siberia, because it originally comes from Kazakhstan, then it's enriched in Russia, and then exported to places like France. So
are you saying France depends on Russia for its nuclear industry as well?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I mean, the thing is, Canada actually could actually export to us, but I don't know why they don't exploit it enough to export enough to France.
They're too busy exploiting children in transgender story hour and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin Trudeau and his amazing moving eyebrows. Oh man! Listen, guys. Someone's going to have to inform me what this means because I don't know. Richard Ford says, "Yeah, the US is fucked. That's why the DXY is at 106 right now." What the hell?
That's the dollar exchange.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah, I've heard the euro is like it's now worth less than $1. So European, like the Germans and the French, like the Europeans in general in the EU are getting really shredded in favour of the Americans for this whole Ukraine debacle.
I just wonder how much of that DXY stuff that Richard Ford is talking about is due to the weakness of other currencies rather than the real strength of the dollar, which of course, they've been printing dollars like it's going out of fashion for the last 3 years, at least.
Well, I mean, I'd say that the US dollar spent a lot more time in the last 20 years below 100 than it did in the preceding 20 years before that. But or at least I think it did. Someone might have to fact check me on that. But yeah, I mean, it's still got. There's still a lot of strength left in the beast. It's just the certain upper echelons of the political process are kind of becoming a bit grotesque. But someone could shape them up. Quite easily and quite quickly. So.
I mean, do we think that Trump's going to run in 2024? And if he does, will it make any difference even if he wins? Or if they allow him to win, I should say?
I think he will try to run, and I think that would be a mistake.
I mean, I don't know. I'm quite neutral on it. I don't know enough about American internal politics. I'd rely on someone like Don the Pleb to give me some advice on what he thinks about that stuff. But what do you guys think? Do you think Trump's going to run? And if he does, will they allow him to win? And if he does win, will he be any better this time than he was last time?
And I just think he's going to be same toothless self that he was in the first presidency. So, I mean,
he doesn't seem to have learned anything.
Yeah. I mean, and also he's still going to have the same problem that even if he's president, he won't control the civil service and the rest of the deep state cathedral stuff, you know.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, do we, I can't see, like, on one hand, Putin, I mean, Trump, I can imagine he will not allow the likes of Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence and Bolton to, like, be in his administration again if he does become president, but who's he going to have in place of them? I mean, Douglas McGregor's all right, but aside from him, where else do you get solid guys? Like, you'd have to recruit from, like, bloody Nick Fuentes' camp or something.
Yeah, fair enough. Admin, you got anything to add on that bit?
No.
All right, I'm just going to put a couple of things up from Richard Ford here, who is a friend of the channel, by the way. Richard Ford points out, that's the point, mate. Everything is relative, and I'm saying, relatively speaking, the US is ascending, not descending. I'm not sure I entirely agree with that, to be honest with you, Richard. But I mean, you're absolutely welcome to your view, and I'm sure you know more about economics than I do. And then he follows that up with, global capital will not flow into China. Now, there I agree with him. I don't think it will. Many people in the alt-right need to get to grips with this. I do agree with you there, Richard. Absolutely, it's not going to flow into China. I think it might flow more into Russia and to some of these other countries. What are they calling themselves now? Is it BRICS or something like that? The group that includes Russia,
Brazil,
China,
Russia, India, wherever it is, and South Africa. Yeah,
I think that could possibly like move things around a bit. But yeah, I see what you're saying, Richard. The US is still number one destination for global capital, and that's a source of power. But like, how much of this money is real money, and how much of it is just money printed to go brrr, you know? This is what I don't quite get. But then I'm not an economics guy. I don't pretend to be. I know there's a reason like Britain's going to have over 15% inflation by the end of this year, according to many quite reputable people now.
Well, I mean, the money printing should actually negatively affect the dollar exchange. I mean, the fact that it isn't, I mean, it would obviously be doing a lot better if they weren't doing that, but the fact that it's still going up shows that there's, as I said, there's still a lot of power there. There's still a lot going on there.
Anyone who just thinks America is going to roll over and sink like the Titanic is being foolish. That's for sure. It's not going to happen like that, and not unless the country itself breaks up in some way because states want to succeed.
Well, it's managed to engineer with a little help from Russia dependency of the West upon its own natural energy reserves. That's what's helping at the moment.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. But I mean,
I'm not saying it's not got levers still to pull. Like I say, the Roman Empire lasted a long time. It still had. It wasn't toothless. It didn't have nothing, but they've got to play a lot of games to try and keep their dominance. And economically, they are not going to be dominant within a decade or two, and that's going to hurt them.
Yeah, look, America has got severe problems. I mean, let's be honest, so have all Western nations, so has Britain. And in many respects, Britain's are worse because we're a smaller economy and we have a much smaller manufacturing base these days, sadly. But in proportion, I mean. So yeah, I'm partly agreeing with what Richard is saying and partly agreeing with what you dudes are saying. I just think the American decline. Yes, we can see there has been an American decline without doubt. But I mean, look at the lunatics who are running the damn place at the moment. Yeah. I mean, not that anyone with half a brain thinks that Joe Biden really runs America. I mean,
You just have to look at Russia's economy to know what kind of levers can be pulled when a country needs to. I mean, the money markets were predicting, Russian exchange rates would be sort of 90 plus rubles to the dollar at this point, and they're down in the 60s.
All right. Now this is another Richard Ford point that I'm going to bring up. Richard, let me say to you, mate, you are always welcome to come on the stream if you would like to put your views in person. You know this. All you got to do is DM me and you're invited. That includes now, if you really want to come on and put your points. But I would just say this. Richard is saying US interest rates are rising. They are tightening. The dollar is rising. Who is really printing money? Guys, we suffer from a bias because we want to see the end of the gay American empire. I see what you're saying. I don't really suffer from a bias because of that. Because, like, I'm actually not as anti-American as many people on the alt-right are. But I'm anti-Joe Biden and the Democrats, and I'm anti the whole corporate globalist bullshit that goes on.
I mean, I have a bias. I do want to see the gay destroyed.
Yeah, I want to see the gay destroyed, but I don't think that's necessarily like average Americans at all.
Oh, I would love to see it destroyed, and I think if you look historically, it would be very unusual for it not to be destroyed at some point. It certainly won't be in my lifetime, but I do think we're seeing the beginning of it.
Oh, I think it could be in your lifetime, mate. I mean, you're not that old. I'm not sure if it will be in mine, but it could be in yours.
No, I don't think it will.
I mean,
you and I will disagree on that one, John, because I think it could be, actually. I mean, I'm not saying that America's going to be reduced to like a third world nation or anything like that.
No, it will start to resemble England.
Well, England in the say 1950s, yeah.
It will become ultimately it will become a regional power. Probably, it depends what happens. Whether the United States
it's got to break up for that to happen. I would say.
I was going to say, if the United States ever becomes the disunited states, then yes, it will become regional powers. Who knows whether that happens? I don't know. And again, if it does happen, it won't be in my lifetime. Well,
again, I'm not sure that's true, John, to be honest. I think that America could break up more quickly than people think it can. Some of it depends on what happens economically over the next couple of years. If things get as bad as I think they're going to, then I think there's going to be serious political change in quite a few Western nations, maybe including America and even UK.
I mean, when it comes to like American dominance, I mean, you get issues like what's happened with Serbia and Kosovo back last Sunday, and the non-issue that was for Taiwan, the supposed crisis. And it's still clear that it's clear that America still has some, at least, semblance of power, because I mean, Serbia won't go balls to the wall over Kosovo, and China won't do anything about Taiwan, despite doing what the Eastern Bloc will call China's final warning time and time again.
Yeah, look, we were talking about this while you were away for a bit there, Mitch, and my opinion is that China has judged that in military terms, they might not win now.
Okay, sure, but I mean, they kept threatening that they would invade Taiwan pretty much. I might be old school here, but I think if a nation delivers a threat, they should act on it, not just
you can't keep crying wolf. I quite agree, but I mean, look at it from the China. If I was like the Chinese president, Winnie the Pooh, I would look at it at the moment and I'd say, well, in 5 years, we're going to have an extra 3 aircraft carriers. And will the American Navy be more powerful in 5 years than it will now? I mean, that's a toss-up. It might well not be.
Okay, so that still comes to my point of why did they bother threatening over Taiwan? Because I'm thinking...
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It was they were bluster. It turned out to be total bluster.
I mean, it's like what? I mean, it's like in countries like Estonia and Russia, they just have that quote, China's final warning. It's pretty much an idiom in most countries at this point. But if you say China's final warning, it means, oh yeah, you're going to threaten to do something, but then it's just all made for no action.
All right. Look, I don't want to turn this into a military stream because, like, I do military streams and I like them. And I might even get you to come on a stream, Mitch, to just talk about military stuff if you want. But I would just say this, is that, there's been this meme about China being a paper tiger for a long time. And China does not have a great record, militarily speaking. It doesn't. Never has. So, maybe that's true. Maybe that's true.
I mean, I'm hearing rumors of like, and even seeing some video footage of like Chinese officers and soldiers like being deployed to the front lines in Ukraine to try and study like how the Russians deploy their artillery and whatnot. Like China's probably sent volunteer officers to look at how modern war's conducted. That's probably what they're doing.
All right, sail away in the chat. I've got to address this. What good are aircraft carriers against hyper missiles? Right. Let me tell you something, sail away. Hypersonic missiles have never been used in action. They've never sunk a single warship in action. They've never been used. And you have, in order to sink an aircraft carrier with any sort of missile, you first of all, who's making all that noise in the background, guys? If you're going to make a load of noise, can you mute yourself, please? There's never been a hypersonic missile used in action to sink any sort of warship, let alone an aircraft carrier. And in order to sink an aircraft carrier with any sort of missile, doesn't matter if it's a hypersonic missile or anything else, you have to first know where that aircraft carrier is, be able to track it in real time, fire your missile, get through about 4 layers of defense, and then hit the missile, then hit the ship. It's far more complicated than these people who go on, oh yeah, hypersonic missiles make aircraft carriers out of date. If that's true, why are the Chinese still building them? And building bigger and bigger ones? It's just nonsense. You don't believe the hype, guys. Missiles never ever perform as well as the manufacturers claim, even when the manufacturers are quite realistic. Yeah, Biarki, I'm not drunk. It's 6:54 a.m. in the morning. You know, I'm drinking coffee to be honest, but you know, seriously, this stuff about hypersonic missiles gets on my bloody nerves because then they're a completely unproven technology. They might work, they might not. And sail away in about 90 seconds. In about 90 seconds of detection, rubbish. You've got to send a message. All right, first of all, you've got to be able to track the ship using a satellite or aircraft radar, whatever it might be. All right. You've then got to get a message from there to the main command headquarters. That main command headquarters has then got to get a message to the missile batteries, who've then got to lock on and then got to fire. It's much more complicated and more slow than you guys think. If you don't know anything about the military, you have to have a chain of command. There's also another problem with hypersonic missiles. It's very, very difficult to tell the difference between a launch of a hypersonic missile and an intercontinental ballistic missile. Very difficult. So if you're someone on a hair trigger, you're looking for like a nuclear attack on the USA or something like that, you want to be careful about launching hypersonic missiles because you wouldn't want someone to think, oh yeah, someone's launching first strike, because you'll suddenly find like all your major cities destroyed about half an hour later. So it's not as simple as people think it is. People also go on about Russian hypersonic missiles sometimes. Hasn't seemed to have done them a great deal of good in the Black Sea. And listen, I'm not anti-Russian. I've said many, many times, Russia is winning the war in Ukraine quite competently. They're not doing it particularly quickly, but they're also doing it with the min casualties they can get away with and without flattening everything. But their so-called hypersonic missiles didn't seem to do very much in the Black Sea. In fact, I don't think they used any. So, hypersonic missiles are not the end of aircraft carriers. Anyone who thinks they are, I think is very foolish. So anyway,
next subject.
Yeah, Mitch, did you have anything you wanted to bring up as a first topic other than what we've already talked about?
So, I mean, I've got Alex Jones on trial over Sandy Hook. Again, you've got. I mean, I could talk about Kosovo and Serbia, but I mean, there's not really much to say about that. Standard Ukraine stuff, and forget the other topic I was going to talk about. I think it's already been mentioned, but yeah.
All right. Well, the first thing I'll say on that is with Alex Jones, you have to give him when the prosecution dude was saying to him, "You're saying that there have been American government cabals to do pedophilia and stuff." he turned around and said, "Oh, you mean like the Clintons with Jeffrey Epstein," which was very, very good and very, very accurate.
Is it true that under the Texas law there that the fines he's been given will be basically commuted to 750 grand or whatever?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of states in America where they have like a maximum you can charge someone. Yeah.
Because on paper he's been fined over sort of $50 million so far, is it?
I thought it was 45, but yeah.
I think there was two separate. I think there was two separate findings. One was for $5 million, which he was kind of saying, look, that's actually pretty good. And then the next day, there was one for like ended up being 45. But like I say, I've seen people suggesting that it doesn't matter. It will be 750 grand in either case.
Yeah, I do know that there are states, a lot of states in America that have that, where there's a maximum thing, because it happened with the Johnny Depp case.
That's right. Amber Heard isn't going to have to pay is it $3.5 million or something? It's just
she's got to pay several million, but one part of it will be reduced to like $750,000 or something, because that's the most you can give someone.
I mean, that's interesting, because I watched videos where straight away Alex Jones is out with the begging bowl, saying he needs people's money for InfoWars to stay alive, and I'm thinking, well, I mean, if the fine's 50 million, you're not staying alive, and if the fine's commuted to, 75k each, then the begging bowl seems a little bit like puppy dog eyes at this point.
I don't know. I like Alex Jones more than I dislike him. Shall I say this?
Oh, I've been watching his stuff for a very long time. I think he's. It's interesting to see the kind of stuff I was watching when I was 16 start being talked about in the mainstream media as if, we knew this all along and this is perfectly normal, and the kind of chemtraily kind of stuff and the weather modification, and I remember him going on about that when I was 16 and everyone calling it conspiracy and he's just a kook. And then I just remember seeing articles in papers recently where it's like, yes, and we put aluminium dioxide in the atmosphere and that helps cause rain in certain places, and it's like they're talking about it as if everyone knows this and it's perfectly normal, and and it is interesting. It is interesting.
Yeah. I like I said, I just like the fact that when he was challenged about American high up government people doing pedophilia, he just pointed out, the Clintons and Epstein, which is undeniably true. That happened. We know this. I will bring up something from the chat here. Spindley says there was a black basketball player who claims to be female, so another one of these mentally ill trannies, who was sentenced for 9 years for weed in Russia. Apparently, they'd been done before, and this is like the second or third time the Russians had caught them. So, they weren't sentenced the first time for this. And then Mitch has pointed out in the chat, Biden wants to give over Victor Bout, aka an arms dealer by the name of the Merchant of Death, in an exchange for this 6'10" anti.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Oh man! And this was the bloke who was did anyone see The Lord of War with Nicolas Cage?
I've heard of it, not watched it.
Yeah, well, it's quite a good movie, but that was who this Victor Bout person is, who that's based upon. So
this is just no one can tell me that America is a fucking ascendant power worthy of 100% total respect when they're doing this.
Yeah, that went through my mind.
Yeah, they want to save their 6'10" supposed woman tranny in exchange for one of the most evil men in the world. You couldn't make it up. You could write this as Monty Python, and people wouldn't believe it. Ethnicity of Victor Bout. I think he's Ukrainian, isn't he?
Yeah, he's Ukrainian, but he was born in modern day. Is it Tajikistan? I think it was.
Yeah, but then his family came from Ukraine and moved to America for a while, I believe.
I'm checking his early life.
I'm sorry, Andrew. People like 555 in the chat are just proving the point because they're saying stuff like, "Oh, cloud seeding is very old technology, no secret." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. That's what we know now.
Yeah.
When I was 16, half a lifetime ago, when Alex Jones was saying it existed and it was being used, the mainstream media was saying the exact opposite. They weren't saying it's very old technology and not a secret. They were saying it's a load of rubbish. So, yeah. You're just buying into exactly the thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's wrong. I can remember when people said it didn't happen, and like we all know that cloud seeding has been going on for years now. So
The early life of Victor Bouts doesn't say anything about him being Jewish, but in that movie Lord of War, the guy, the character who's based on him, they depict him as being. I think they make it quite complicated, but they depict him as being Jewish or his family taking up Judaism or
something like
that.
Yeah, it says for me that he served in the Soviet Air Force in Angola, apparently for a few weeks.
Fucking hell.
Wow, there you go.
That's niche.
Yeah, and at the time the Soviet Union fell apart, he operated 4 Antonov AN planes.
That's big transports, yeah.
Yeah, you can imagine. Like, because I mean, I suppose in the Discord, it says something like he had, like, at the height of his, like, sort of arms dealing empire, he had 300 people as well as 40 to 60 planes working at any time for him. Yeah. So, quite a big guy, arms dealing scene.
He was making a fortune, but the point is, he wasn't doing that without some cooperation from people in America, etc.
Yeah, I mean, this guy had contacts in fucking former Yugoslavia, America, former Soviet Union, you name it. I mean, he had his finger in many pies, shall we say.
Yeah. Richard Ford, I've put your comment up on the screen, but I'm not going to comment on it. And the reason I'm not is because YouTube is not a free speech platform, and you know it.
Well, we can't talk about the Jews? What are you talking about?
Well, we can talk about them, but only in a nice way.
Hey, look, all I'm going to say is the Holocaust was an inside job. I'm not going to take it any further than that.
Yeah. Yes, well, I'm making no comment about that, Susan. This is purely Adamant's own private view. I did not say that, all right?
What, are you saying the Holocaust wasn't an inside job?
Look, I'm not even going to talk about it, man. I'm not. I don't want to lose my channel. I don't. And we know what happens to people who talk about that stuff. You know. Richard Ford says plenty of Ukraine number plates in Andorra, which are all Porsches. They're not exactly refugees, he says, which I can absolutely believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. All right, gents. Anyone have anything else they wanted to bring up particularly, or shall we move on to our next topic?
No, I'm good.
All right. This one probably won't be that long because we talked about it before a little bit. Some of you will have noticed in the Discord that George, a week or two ago, was saying that him and his mates had worked out that UK inflation was going to be over 15% by the end of this year. Like real inflation rather than what the government claims it is. And I've been looking around, and lo and behold, a lot of quite reputable people are now saying UK inflation is going to be over 15% by the end of the year.
Well, the Bank of England had their latest meeting on August the 4th, and they basically go through their projections and proposals and stuff, and that's where they talk about the interest rate and so on. So in the UK, they raised the interest by another 0.5%, so it's now at 1.75. And at the same meeting, they basically said they expect inflation to peak early next year at 14%. But they're also forecasting now 5 quarters of decline, which means the UK will enter recession probably, officially in Q2 of next year.
Right. So after March.
Yes, but it will. Q4 this year is forecast as the first quarter of decline.
Oh yeah, look, I mean, as I said,
of course,
I've seen people like involved with stuff like the Financial Times, etc., saying, yeah, like real UK inflation is going to peak over 15%.
I was going to say though, but of course we know that recession isn't defined by 2 successive quarters of decline anymore. So
well, only if you believe Joe Biden's America, but yeah. But I've been saying for ages, I think UK inflation, real inflation next year is going to be over 20%. But I mean, that's just.
Well, it depends what you're talking about, because inflation is the economy as a whole. So we've talked about this before, and it's probably likely that the market as a whole will be 14, 15 odd %. But when you're talking to the individual who doesn't necessarily participate in the market as a whole, particularly poorer people, who a higher proportion of their income goes on food, fuel, and so on.
Rent and mortgages and
their exposure to that element of the entire market inflation will be proportionally higher. And so, yeah, you're right. For poorer people, it's probably going to feel much more like 20-25% probably.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff which is discretionary spending, which isn't going up particularly high. But a lot of the stuff that you have to spend money on, like, basic foods, petrol, as you say, diesel, stuff like, obviously, energy bills.
I mean, my energy bill, I finished my year-long fix at the end of this month, and my energy bill is going to be going from basically £100 a month to over £300 a month. So,
yeah, and that seems to be...
That's a bit more than 14% inflation.
Yeah, same thing where I am. It's the same where I am, John. It's going up like 2/3 to double, basically, and we're going to see increasing amount. I mean, I know Jobu was on Australian stream earlier today, and he was talking about how the house price bubble in Australia is going to burst because the mortgage rates are going to have to go up.
Well, I'm now rooting for interest rates to go up. I've fixed my mortgage for 10 years just the other week.
I think you were very wise too. But I mean,
I'd quite like them. I mean, it would suck for an awful lot of people, but I'd quite like them to go above sort of 2 or 3%.
Very likely to happen, if you ask me. I just think we're going to be, if we come back to this in April, say next year, I think we're going to be in a really bad position. 555 in the chat says, why are Brits not rioting in the streets? Well, a recent poll that they did on Brits said that most Brits actually do expect there to be riots and looting and stuff next year.
Oh, I think if number 10 Downing Street, whoever ends up in there, doesn't do something pretty sharpish in September, you're going to see pitchforks outside that little gated community, I reckon. A lot of people are going to die this winter if they don't take some pretty drastic action.
A lot of old age pensioners are going to end up freezing to death because they can't afford to heat their homes, or they can't afford to eat properly.
In the UK every year, there's about 60,000 deaths in winter due to cold. It will be interesting to see how many there are this year.
Yeah. Adam, what's your view on this stuff, mate?
Well, I was raging about this last week, wasn't I? How fucked European energy policy is.
Yeah.
It's absolutely infuriating, and I don't really see it getting better. I really hoped, beyond all hope, that there would at least be. I mean, I know everyone hates them here, but there would at least be like a half-competent neocon, right, that would ride the Russia-Ukraine thing straight into Downing Street. Who'd be willing to bring in stuff like fracking and everything else just to start plugging holes in the energy issues. But there's been nothing. We're stuck now with Liz Truss and Sunak.
Well, that's going to be our next topic, so we'll move on to that in a minute, Adam, if you don't mind. But yeah, I see what you're saying. What do you guys say to what George is saying in the chat? The central bank officially uses a rule called the Taylor rule, which says interest rates should be higher than inflation. By all rights, if the Bank of England is anticipating inflation, interest rate should be 18%.
I mean, yeah, I the problem they've got is that for the better part of 2 decades, they've made everyone think that they can basically get loans for virtually free by comparison to what a normal interest rate would be. And you've got so many people that are so invested in the fact that the interest rates were so low. I mean, if you're a Great Reset conspiracy theorist, I mean, raising the interest rates now quite quickly and quite drastically, while it is technically the right thing to do, it's gonna redistribute an awful lot of wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. Richard Ford says the government and Bank of England can't do anything. These guys can't print oil, refineries, gas fields, or oil rigs. Absolutely. And I mean, we were talking last week, I think, about, if you're going to start building nuclear power stations, that should have happened 5 years ago, not now. And even like reopening coal mines and automating them, which Britain certainly could do, that's going to take a couple of years to get anywhere.
The quite novel and humorous thing is that Kwasi Kwarteng has been going around begging companies to keep their coal plants open, their coal-fired power stations open, having told the businesses that they had to close them because of the Green New Deal rubbish. And the irony is that these companies who would have kept their coal-fired power stations open without being paid to do it are now going to be paid by the government to spin these stations back up.
Okay.
Having been told to close them. It's fantastic. You couldn't write it.
Captain Smith in the chat has made a good point. There's a thing going around about people in the UK not paying their energy bills. I think it's called can't pay, won't pay.
Yeah, they're Marxists.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. But they do seem to be gaining quite a lot of support.
I think if you look at who's signed up, they've got a map, and it's a few thousand people. It needs to be the poll tax kind of levels if they wanted to achieve anything, and it simply won't be.
I hadn't paid much notice to these guys, and then I had a bit of a run-in with them on Twitter earlier this week, and there was a guy in the comments who said like, "Oh, I'm not a Tory, guys, but I just think that maybe we should make people aware of what the risks are of them not paying their bills." And then just immediately they were just being lambasted by like 50 people who are like, "You might not think you're a Tory, but you might not say you're a Tory, but you think like one." And I thought, okay, that's everything I need to know about these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do agree with what you're saying there, Alan. I also agree with what 555 says here. The UK government has brought this upon itself with its ludicrous energy policy.
Yeah.
We've been shooting, not just the UK, of course. I mean, Germany, France, everyone else. We've been shooting ourselves in the foot with this nonsense watermelon green net zero crap.
I mean, Germany's been like the worst offender of this. I mean, Mitch, you've just pointed out in the chat that most Germans are against this stuff, and they are. Like, even if you're on the ground in Germany and you speak to these people, it's the people there are pretty common sense on energy policy, but the government just does the opposite, as they always do in the West now.
Even if you believe that green quote unquote energy is the future, and that's what we have to transition to because population density, save the planet, environmentalism, blah blah blah. England and Britain and the UK has an awful lot of relatively clean coal and relatively high quality coal, which could be used to power us while we transition.
Absolutely, 100%.
And there would be no need to be begging America for fuel or, buying fuel from Scandinavia and wherever. We could be relatively self-sufficient in that, at least for a short period while we transition to this utopia.
And just imagine if they opened a couple of coal mines reopened a couple of coal mines in, say, Wales, which has some of the highest quality coal in the world, which is why the Royal Navy used to use it, because it's very efficient.
Richard Ford is saying some very relevant stuff in the chat, but he's missing the point. My point was that we could have quite easily done this, but we chose not to.
Yeah, we haven't done. I mean, the point is we could still do it, but you're not going to see the benefits for like 3 or 4 years. That's the trouble. Even if like Liz Truss wins and does it tomorrow, which I doubt she will, but even if she did, does it in September, let's say, the benefit of that will not arrive until getting on towards the end of the decade.
And again, this is why Kwasi Kwarteng has been in talks with a number of companies to keep their coal-fired power plants open.
But what I was going to say is that, like, if you reopened a couple of coal mines in, say, Wales, where, as I say, they have some of the highest quality coal in the world, you make them modern coal mines that are fully automated and what have you.
Yep.
You'd provide jobs in an area which doesn't have great jobs. You'd provide jobs where the people have a tradition in that stuff, and it's just going to be a win-win for everybody. You know,
Yeah.
including the government that did it, of course, because, you know, you might even find that people who get those jobs might vote for the bloody government that did it.
Well, I don't think people vote along those lines. I think people just go with the wind ultimately. But you know, I mean, you saw this with like Boris. I mean, I think I brought this point up last week. But you know, like Boris literally wrote into his manifesto, or like very, very late, and basically went around talking about this having a nuclear renaissance. I mean, they said that because they thought it would be popular, but not only did they put fuck all money towards it anyway,
Yeah.
and that's such a long-term plan, it doesn't do anything now. But you know, the same sort of media and press outlets and even parts of the Tory party will now be turning around to people saying, well, we're not pursuing nuclear because it's not popular.
Yeah.
Of course, you've got places like Germany that were virtually self-sufficient through nuclear who went and turned them all off. And now the EU's turned around and said that, oh, actually, gas and nuclear are green energy and we should probably be doing something with them.
Yeah, and there's no way you can build a new nuclear power station in under say 6 years. Impossible. No.
And to be honest as well, it's not, you don't even really want to, because I mean, this is the problem that France has come up against. I mean, France is doing pretty good on energy, but they've got a problem where they essentially built all their nuclear power stations at the same time, and all of that infrastructure is basically coming up for renewal all at the same time. And
well, the problem you've got with a lot of the West is that you had a generation or generations of successive people that understood the principle that you planted trees under which you'd never be shaded, and that was inherited by a generation of people who saw all this lovely shade that they'd inherited and didn't understand that they had to be part of that chain.
Yeah, totally agree. Mitch, you haven't said anything, mate. What's your opinion on this stuff?
I mean, I haven't really got anything new to say. It's just rage at the incompetence of our leaders, I suppose. Same with Atterman.
Minoan in the chat says, why do plants take so long to build? Is it regulations, inspections, government bureaucracies? I'm sure all of that comes into it, but I would also say, like, these are very highly technological installations, and they have to be bloody safe. So, and also there are limited numbers of people who can build them. I mean, I think someone was talking on the stream last week about, you know, the engineers who can even do the welding in these things.
Reactor welders. They're very rare. They cost a fortune as well. They pay them, like £500 an hour or something ridiculous.
There you go. There's a job to go into, boys. but yeah,
sounds good to me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Jesus, you could work 2 days a week, for God's sake.
Mate, I think work one day a week on that.
I think they only get paid for the very specific hours that they're doing it for, kind of like pilots. But
yeah. No, I realise that. But I mean, look, the point is, I mean, that's why they take so long, is because they're very complicated, highly technological things, and the blokes who design and build them are very skilled, and they are overwhelmingly blokes. By the way, I bet you won't find many women involved in that industry.
That's because we're racist.
Or sexist, yeah.
It doesn't matter, everything's racist.
Or sexist, yeah. Oh, man, I listen.
Homophobic.
I'm laughing because otherwise you've got to cry. It's just, we're so stupid. Robert Edwin House says, show your faces, pansies. You do nothing but talk. Do you know what, Robin Edwin House? You can't even do that. Watch.
Bye, Robert.
See, want to be, but anyway. So there we go. I don't know. Look, when I get someone like that in the chat, I either think they're a troll or they're a plant of some description, you know? But yeah. If you looked at what's going on in the modern West today, and I don't just mean the Americans, Britain equally, if you looked at what's going on in the West today, it is impossible not to think, did Monty Python write this as a script?
I think it would be a lot more entertaining if they did. So I'd probably be for that.
If you look at it from a slightly detached point of view, Armin, it is quite entertaining, bro. You know, it's just so comically inept.
Yeah, I mean there are parts of it that still work quite well. I mean, we were talking about the Nancy Pelosi thing earlier, going to Taiwan. I mean, they played quite a good little trick on everyone there, I think, where they were playing it off as if the establishment were disagreeing with one another over whether she should go or not. When it seemed pretty obvious that actually they'd all kind of agreed to send her, and you know the US Navy and everything had positioned themselves accordingly in the weeks leading up to that event.
Yeah, of course I am.
Oh, it isn't. It is theatre.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look, all of this stuff is there up to a point, I think. Okay, let's move on to the next subject, because we've spoken about this and we're going to come back to it, I'm sure, you know. Like the self-inflicted energy crisis, which is a combination of the watermelon green net zero bullshit and sanctions on Russia. We've spoken about this, I don't know, half a dozen times already. And I'm sure we're going to speak about it at least another half a dozen times. So fair enough. Let's move on to something else. Does it really matter who wins out of Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak? Is the next topic.
Am I the only one who got a vote on that?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Atman might have, actually.
No, nothing. But though I will say, Liz Truss has got a thing on her website where you can go and list your priorities. What you'd like to see
posted that in my Discord today, and I think people should absolutely spam the hell out of it.
I'll get the link and post it in
It's
chat.
called, is it telltrust.com?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, put it in the chat, Adam, and please put it on the Discord, because
obviously I went straight away and talked about the problems of not just illegal immigration but legal immigration, and also shilled the fact that the government disincentivizes the family in the UK through the tax regime.
Yeah, you can actually put your priorities. You can set them all the same.
You choose 3 priorities, and then you can make you've got a box where you can put, I don't know, 1,000 character comment. So
yeah, I'll just put it in chat.
Thank you, and put it in Discord, please, somebody, so that I'll stick it in the description of the stream as well, because that sounds a really good idea, and I've certainly got some ideas to tell. So.
Yeah, I got my election pack today, and that was you got basically a pamphlet from both Rishi and Liz, and Rishi's pamphlet was absolutely rubbish, and Liz's pamphlet wasn't too much better, but there was this link to tell her what you wanted her to do, and I thought, well, you're asking, I'll tell you.
Well, look, I'm just going to say I don't want Sunak to win because I don't want a non-British Prime Minister. I don't like...
The only consideration. They're both the same, but I want the non-brown one.
Yep, absolutely true. I don't like Liz Truss at all. I mean, she was a Remainer back in the day, for God's sake.
Lib Dem anti-monarchy Remainer, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, I can't really endorse Liz Truss, but on the other hand, I would prefer her to Rishi Sunak. And not only because Rishi Sunak is a brown person, but also because I don't like Rishi Sunak's policies, I must say, as well.
Well, I'm very keen for basically the advocate of MMT within the government to not get the top job. So,
Well, I mean, also traditionally in the Conservative Party, the bloke who sticks the knife in, who was Sunak, shouldn't win.
Well, you see, the bloke who stuck the knife in was Sajid Javid.
Really? Okay, then.
who notably did not get anywhere in the leadership election. Rishi Sunak cleverly positioned himself as number 2. Interestingly, Sajid Javid is now backing Liz Truss, which is
what a surprise!
He's seen which way it's gonna go. So
I just hated that photograph of Sunak with the 50 pence coin.
Diversity built Britain,
which is a complete lie, because Britain wasn't at all diverse until at least 1948, and even then, not much.
Yeah, I remember seeing pictures where they took, because there's that one where it's got his big fat ugly face with the coin.
Yeah,
and people were like photoshopping like the 7-7 bus with the top blown off scenes and stuff behind him.
Yeah. I mean, leaving aside, he's married to the daughter of a billionaire, for God's sake.
Well, billionaire heiress, but yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. What, all right, I think I've made my point clear. If anyone else wants to say what they think about Truss versus Sunak, go ahead.
Well, I voted for Truss.
Oh, imagine voting in 2022.
I know, Ruta, I'm fuming.
I have to say, if I was a member of the Conservative Party, I probably would have voted Truss just to go anti-Sunak, basically.
I mean, she's incompetent and he's brown, so it's not exactly a great choice.
Do I want an incompetent WF shill or a competent one? I think the answer is an incompetent one.
Yeah, it's what I mean. We've got a choice between some warmongering bitchy crone who can't tell where the Russian-Ukrainian border is on a map.
She knows a thing or two about pork markets, though.
And cheese.
That is a disgrace.
Or neoliberal produced diversity built Britain coins. That's a real good choice we've got here, lads, isn't it?
I think it's interesting though, because Truss is throwing the kitchen sink at policy, which Rishi's been quite light on and very reactive, reactionary rather than Truss, who's basically just gone out and said, "Look, I'm going to give you everything you might actually want, other than any kind of comment on legal immigration," which is what you come to expect these days.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all of the debates that we've seen so far, and I'm willing to lay my bottom dollar that all of the debates that are due to come up,
no never talk about
mentioned it. No one's mentioned it.
The boat crossings come up every time, and it was quite humorous. Rishi Sunak yesterday saying that he would do literally nothing was off the table when it came to the boat crossings, and I thought, are you going to sink the boats in the channel? Are you? Is that not off the table?
Okay,
no, of course that's off the table. It's just you're talking rubbish, man. You know stuff is off the table. You know there is stuff that we couldn't possibly countenance doing because of the geopolitical outcry it would cause, and least of all from the fifth column of 20 million non-British people in Britain.
Yep.
No, of course you're not going to. Of course, there are lots of things that aren't on the table. Don't talk rubbish.
I mean, of course, broadly as well. The boat crossings really aren't that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. And people would be a lot more, a lot less aggroed about that sort of stuff if legal immigration was much more strictly controlled anyway.
Yeah.
And just to clarify for Susan, I'm not saying they should be sunk in the channel. I'm just saying that Rishi is an idiot for suggesting that nothing is off the table when things clearly are off the table.
Nobody on the stream ever suggests anything that is illegal, and we never ever support violence, Susan, ever. We are totally against that.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter.
Except in Minecraft, of course.
Except in Legoland World of Adventures. Oh wait, no, not that one. But George said above, he said, I morally struggle with the idea that the leader of the country should be an ex-investment banker. Yeah, but even worse than that, he worked at a company that was nominally listed as a charity, but was actually just facilitating the hostile takeovers of British companies by foreign ones.
Just to say to Richard in the chat, he said unlimited migration as long as it's legal. I don't think you will find anyone on this stream, not one of the four of us, would agree with that.
That's like the typical conservative line, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That's their typical cope, where they go, oh, we're fine with legal immigration.
What I don't understand, I mean, I do understand it, because obviously when the BBC or one of these mainstream media organisations does one of these like question and answer sessions with the candidates, they must obviously stop anyone asking a serious question like, why were there almost 1 million immigrants under a Conservative government last year? I can't believe no one wanted to ask that question. You know, all of this stuff we have about a housing crisis and all the rest of it, and the supposed crisis with the NHS, etc., 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 all comes down to don't bring in 1 million immigrants in a year, while most of the country was locked away in their homes.
The thing that bugs me is you'll say that, and then the lefties will go, "Oh, but the immigrants are propping up the NHS," and you're like, "Okay, well, even if you accept that the NHS is only possibly able to be run by immigrants, the population required to staff the NHS is a tiny fraction of the amount of people we've brought in to do other stuff."
Yes, absolutely, and of course, the more people you bring in, the more you need.
Oh, their families need to come over, and then they have 8 children each, and
I mean, that's one of the other giant copes of all this is that they kept saying it was about it's because we had an aging population and blah blah blah, but because of the whole immigration of dependents, I think from, was it 2012 to 2020, like the average age in Britain actually went up because of all the dependents coming in.
Well, and the irony is, again, if you come back to the taxation policies, we might not have an aging population if you didn't structure the tax system in such a way that both parents have to go out to work, and so they only end up having 1 or 2 children because they can't afford to look after more than 1 or 2 children.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing is that I mean we've actually had quite low birth rates at other times. Like if you think about a birth rate as a ratio, that intersects between how many children they're actually having and how many survive. That historically, there's actually been quite a few points where we've had lower birth rates than now, like the 1920s, for example. All through the 1920s, we had shockingly low birth rates,
and maybe a gradual decline to a self-sustaining country that isn't spaffing money up the wall on, a Ponzi pension scheme and, an NHS that isn't fit for purpose and so on. Maybe if there was that gradual, erosion of the welfare state, it wouldn't matter.
Look at Japan. Look at Japan. Japan has exactly the same demographic problems as Western nations like Britain, and Japan, like Britain, is an island nation. But they are not resorting to huge amounts of mass immigration. The people they allow into Japan are there on short-term working visas and have to go home at the end of them.
Yeah, I'd say Japan's actually had it a little bit worse than us. But like here, if you let's say had a remigration and reduced the population back to like 58 million, and then the population continued to drop to maybe 45 million over 30 to 40 years, no one's going to really cry about that. It wouldn't be seen as a particularly giant issue.
All right.
The problem is you've got to prop up a pension scheme that was put in place for the 2% of people that used to, the 2% of people that used to live long enough to claim it, and now virtually everyone claims it. I'm not saying like, oh, we should take away the pensions from the elderly who've paid in all their lives, and what they have to realise is they were paying for their parents. You know?
All right, but hang on. Richard Ford makes a good point here, chaps. He says, but yeah, the line doesn't go up in Japan. That's the problem. But Japan is still an absolutely modern nation. That actually, I mean, like I follow quite a lot of channels that are in Japan because I find Japanese culture quite interesting. And
Iron Duke weeb confirmed.
I don't watch anime, mate. I really don't. Anime doesn't do
Are
it
you
for me.
are you a big fan of the vending machines with used underwear in? Is that?
No, I didn't even know. I didn't even know there were such things, to be honest. But I do find like Japanese culture quite interesting, and I like the historical films.
Are you a hikikomori? Is that what they're called?
I don't even know what that means, mate. So I presume I'm not, because I don't know what it means. But all I'm saying is Japan is a modern, very clean country. It doesn't seem to have very high crime rates. Everything seems to work pretty well there, and yet they don't have mass immigration. And like Richard Ford is saying, but the line's not going up. But it seems to be perfectly all right for most Japanese people.
Yeah, I mean the line up thing's kind of a weird one because hasn't Japan's per capita GDP actually been going up over the decades pretty comfortably?
Well, I mean, the other thing
I might need to double check that.
The Japanese have a bigger navy than the Royal Navy. I mean, all right, they don't have the backing to send it all the way around the world in large amounts, but in regional terms, Japan actually has more warships than the Royal Navy does. So, they don't seem to be doing that bad to me.
And their trains run on time.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, and their cities are not full of litter. That you're not liable to get little kids being raped all over the place by gangs from Pakistan, which I can think of a country where that happens all the time and gets covered up.
That is one thing that I always found very, very interesting about the kind of old videos of London and stuff. And I know there was like a lot of coal being burnt in the air and stuff, but there's never any litter. There's never any litter.
No, it was quite clean.
Individually, each of those people would be considered to be in poverty by today's standards, but they have a lot higher standards than we have today.
Yeah, I mean, look, my father tells me, like, in World War II and just after World War II, like, women would polish the white curbstone in front of their street door. That's just what people did because people wanted people to look at their house and say, "Oh, that house is well looked after." You know what I mean? It was just...
Yeah, well, now they're too busy punching in for Bob. Doing their 9 to 5 in the office, doing nothing of any real worth.
I just don't. Well, hang on. Richard is saying something. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think you can compare Andorra with Britain or Japan because Britain and Japan are great big island nations, and Andorra is a tiny little principality. But I do agree with what he's saying. It's about policy decisions to some degree. Like if Andorra let anyone in, I'm sure it would go downhill very quickly, which is what's happening to Britain.
But Germany, sort of 15 to 20 years ago, was like that too.
Yeah, sure.
And Germany is also a pretty large nation that has a lot of the same restraints that we do. And Germany's gone downhill tremendously just in the last 10 years. Like I've seen it. I mean, economically they're doing all right, but I've travelled there quite a few times, and it's pretty. It's not terrible, but compared to what it was, to me, it just seems pretty bleak.
Well, I think it's going to get a lot bleaker because, I mean, Germany has, as we said last week, has much longer and harder winters than Britain does because it doesn't have an Atlantic climate and it doesn't have the Gulf Stream. And from what I can work out, Germany's going to be in even bigger problems in the coming winter than Britain.
Germany's going to be very cold this winter. Very cold.
Yeah. And like I said, they have a much worse climate than Britain in the winter.
Yeah, I mean, I have said on that stream last week, I do think going off of Germans, I talked on Telegram, they will try and bear the brunt of it. I mean, you can have a go at the Germans for getting themselves into that situation to begin with, but like they're willing to just ride out the pain of it, from what I can tell of it.
Mitch, how much of it though is the German people, and how much of it is the German government? Because, like, if you looked at, say, Britain over the last, I don't know, certainly 60 years, the majority of British people have wanted mass immigration either stopped or vastly reduced.
I mean, this is a
governments don't do it.
Even the immigrants, the majority of them wanted mass immigration stopped. They don't even want mass immigration. There's a reason they've come here, right? They came here to get away from where they came from. They don't want it following them.
But this is my point. So, like, you know, when we talk about the Germans, for example, and I see the same thing with a lot of people on the right when they talk about the Americans. It's not the ordinary people. It's the bloody government, which doesn't do what the ordinary people want at all.
I mean, first of all, I would say Germans are quite conformist. I mean,
Yeah.
Brits are quite conformist, but Germans, they generally are more conformist than Brits, I would say. So,
yeah, fair enough.
So, secondly, I mean, the guy I'm talking to on Telegram, he's German. He's a German nationalist. Like, he votes for, like, he's further to the right than the Alternative for Deutschland party. So, he's not exactly a lover of Globalheim, I'll put it that way. But even he's saying, look, we're just going to have to bear the pain of our terrible energy policy, what with Russia and whatnot. So, you know, it's just, I going off that, the Germans will try to avoid the pain as best they can, but they are going to suffer. I mean, a lot of elderly people are going to die probably. But
well, who cares about little old ladies in Germany compared to, like, looking after Ukraine, you know?
But didn't you see Zelensky and his wife on the front of Vogue? Just look how stylish they are. Of course they need protecting.
Yeah, love them. was Zelensky wearing one of his con artist, like, camo outfits?
Yeah,
right,
he's always got to pretend as if he's just come off the front.
Yeah, which he's never been near, but yeah, okay.
No, only months before the war on a single visit, but yeah.
Well, and that was constantly conned to saying he was there then, which of course he wasn't. But you know,
yeah, like Richard said in the chat.
All I'm saying is, he is an actor, and is he going to get an Oscar for his performance or not?
I think he's more thinking he's going to stay out of a body bag if he does what he thinks he has to do.
Man, I don't know. I think, you know, we've got to really start separating peoples from the governments, because the governments have separated themselves from the people.
okay, but people are conformist, so
yeah, no.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much people dislike their governments. If at the end of the day, like it's like people around me, they still vote Tory or Labour despite the fact they hate both parties.
The problem is that there isn't a choice, so you really can't choose anyone else. Like, if you look at the manifestos of any party likely to come within an inch of power in the UK, the differences are insubstantial. Like, if you're talking about green policy, if you look at the four largest parties in the UK, which are, at least the four parties with any representation in Westminster, which are the Conservatives, Labour, the Liberal Democrats, and the Green Party, all four of them are virtually the same when it comes to housing, when it comes to the environment, when it comes to green taxation, all that kind of stuff. They're within a hair's breadth of each other. It's all the same.
Paper thin differences. I totally agree, John.
You know, all three of them in their manifestos for the last election said that they wanted to increase the number of housing, increase effectively the green belt, green spaces, and none of them were going to do anything about immigration, which effectively means increase it. And you can't do all of those things at the same time, and you can't vote for anyone that suggests anything different. Not anyone that's going to, like I say, end up with MPs in Parliament.
Well, not yet, but look, if inflation gets as bad, this is kind of what we started talking about. If inflation gets as bad as I think it's going to, and we really do go from recession into depression, that may give us the best chance we have of some sort of real change. That's like, because I am someone who wants to be a glass half full person. That's what I'm hoping anyway. I'm not
Well,
saying it will happen, but it could.
Liz Truss again, is talking about the fact that, albeit for a year, she wants to get rid of the green levy on petrol and so on. And it's like the thing with government is it's very difficult to have a temporary policy, and we know from what's happened in the past that people don't take very well to kind of those kind of changes. So once it's gone, I think it'll be very difficult for them to put it back in. You look at the free school meals. They one summer said that they were going to provide those, thanks to Marcus Rashford and co, to people in the holidays, and now they have to provide it every holiday. It's very difficult to go back when people have been given something.
Yeah.
And when you give up that green levy, even if it's just for a year, it's going to be very hard for them to put that back in place. Especially when they're going into an election cycle and they're not going to want to rock the boat because they want to get the votes, because they want to win. That it will be very, very hard to put that back in.
Yeah, if she takes that off, and she's only got 2 years before the next election. Yeah, I agree totally, John. She won't be able to remove that before the next election anyway.
So we could be seeing the cracks in the plaster.
It would give a problem to Labour, because Labour really have to go along with the green stuff.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, all right. I'm not going to disagree with that. Let's use a glass half full thing here, and that's possible. Yeah, I agree. Adam, what do you reckon about that, mate?
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that like temporary government policy always becomes permanent government policy. I mean they do this with they do this a lot. You see this all the time, where they bring in something as a trial, and it's just something that they're bringing in, and you just have to accept that. I definitely think there was something before we were talking about, like German fanaticism. Conformity,
not
there's a little bit.
Well, it's a bit of both, but it's projected out of different ways. Yeah, you see this a lot with you do see this a lot on the ground in Germany, like a tremendous amount. You'll be driving along, you'll have your indicator on just a little bit too long, and someone's flashing you to bring you back into line.
I would just say, Adam, and I beg your pardon for interrupting you, but I would just say a good German channel to follow on YouTube is Red Pill Germany. I reckon he's pretty cool.
All right, I haven't seen that one. Yeah. But the thing is as well, it's not just that they've got this historical burden on them. It's constantly pushed onto them all the time. They can't be allowed to forget it even for a second, even in Germany. It's pretty disgusting. They've had, I mean, German TV, for example, is absolutely grotesque. They'll have all sorts of. Also, I remember there being actually something on there where they had supposedly a comedy, where it was all these Jews sitting in some sort of giant caravan, watching on these cameras as they're sort of taking the piss out of these sort of very blonde, blue-eyed Germans, like struggling to survive in the woods. It's horrifically subversive, and they have, like, in some of their cities they literally have protests where Antifa will come out and have the just anti-German protests, not protesting against anything particular, just the idea of Germany. It's
the German nationhood needed to be destroyed.
Fuck these people. But
I don't know. I think the Germans would be better off going back to Prussia and Bavaria and all that stuff. But I mean, that's just me. But Richard Ford in the chat said, and I presume he's talking about Red Pill Germany. Is he a race mixer? I don't know, and I don't care, mate. When did I ever say I was a white nationalist? I'm an Anglo-Celtic British nationalist. I'm not a white nationalist. And if he has got a Chinese or Japanese girlfriend or something like that, I don't give a shit, mate, frankly.
We already know Iron Duke is fine with the Japanese. It's all good.
Yeah, I kind of like the Japanese. I have to say, I do.
He's got that yellow fever.
No, it's no. Look, the title of this stream on which we are on episode 83 now is Splendid Isolation, and the only good
Weeb edition.
The only good alliance Britain ever had prior to World War One was the Anglo-Japanese Naval Alliance. It was the only good one we ever had.
Oh, what about Portugal? Come on.
Oh yeah, okay, but they weren't really an alliance; they were just friends.
What's friendship if not alliance?
Well,
I mean, I can't really talk because when I was a teenager, I had a Vietnamese girlfriend. So
yeah, there you go. Exactly. And look, I don't care, mate. Look, earlier on today, Joe Boo, who is a member of our Discord, was in the chat on the Franklin stream, who is an excellent Australian YouTuber. Now he's married to a girl from Taiwan, and got 4 kids. So
as long as she's a Gurkha rifle and has served for 10 years, Iron Duke is fine with you dating her.
No, hang on. All right, you have given me my chance to reply to that, John. I am someone who sets limits on what I will and will not accept. If someone is a Gurkha rifleman, they've served for at least 10 years in the British Army, they've settled in Britain. If someone like that...
You can get married to them.
No, well, I'm obviously not, because that would be a bloke. But, I mean, and also I'm never going to get married again. I've been there and done that twice. But the point I would make is that if someone like that came along and was really based, I would absolutely support them. Because they've got that going back to like 1816 history that the Gurkha Rifles had with the British. So,
I'm only ruffling your feathers.
Yeah, I know you are, man. But I am actually quite consistent on this, and like I'm not a white nationalist in the sense that I don't think any white European man should ever marry a Japanese girl or something like that. I'm not. Sorry, I'm not. I mean, if you're going to talk about someone from Africa or India or something, I might have a slightly different view. But, that's just me.
no, I only date British birds now.
Yeah, some of them.
I might accept someone from Western Europe or the Med if they were particularly good.
Yeah,
but...
yeah. I've got nothing against girls from like Greece and Italy and places like that at all.
Well, Greece is probably a little bit too east for me, but
No, listen. You and I will just have to disagree on that one. All right.
Well, I've dated Eastern European before and other things, and it didn't really work out. So.
All right. Well, I'm gonna like make half the people who follow me like go and leave immediately. I went out for a while with a Persian girl who was as white as I was, and she insisted on calling herself a Persian girl because her family left.
Well, they're Indo-European, aren't they? So I mean,
yeah, they absolutely are. But she was as white as I was in skin color, and like she insisted on Persian because her family left when the Shah was deposed, and doesn't like the mullahs at all. And I also went out for a while in Australia with a Christian Lebanese girl who was an air hostess and damn cute. So I don't care. That stuff doesn't worry me.
Iron Duke is pro-colonization.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. The woman I married and had a son with went to Cheltenham Ladies College and sounds like Her Majesty the Queen on the telephone. So,
the chat. I love the chat at the moment. Brilliant.
But I'm not one of these guys. All white people are great, or everybody else is all horrible, because it's not bloody true. And by the way, a notorious ALB, I love the George MacDonald Fraser Flashman novels. They are brilliant. They are absolutely brilliant. The 2 movies they made about them are crap, but the books are great. But yeah. All right, we're going to move on. We've got 2 more subjects to do before we finish, I hope. And the first one is, will any political leader in Britain allow us to leave the European Court of Human Rights?
No.
No.
I don't think it matters. All the while we got the Supreme Court anyway.
Yeah, all
that
right.
needs to go too.
Let's take it as a given that I think all of us agree the Supreme Court was a
Because
Tony Blair
we-
add-on.
Well, what we need to remember is that 97% of those people that were meant to be on flights to Rwanda were taken off of them before it even got to the European Court of Human Rights.
Yeah.
It was our own courts that did it. So let's not worry about the 3%. Let's worry about the 97%.
But do you think we should leave the European Court of Human Rights, John? Because I think we should. Why are we still in that when we're not part of the EU?
Well, I fundamentally believe that any deference to an external body is fundamentally unconstitutional, given the sovereign nature of Parliament. So it's an abrogation of parliamentary duty that we're tied into this kind of foreign ideology. It's for Parliament to determine what is legal in the UK, not for some court in Brussels or wherever. I know it's not strictly part of the EU, but it's part and parcel. Let's be honest.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, because you kind of have to join it if you're in the EU.
I think the only European country that isn't a part of it is Russia, isn't it?
I have no idea, mate. I just don't understand why Britain is. When we left the EU, we should have said, right, see ya.
Well, because it's not part of the EU. It predates the EU, from what I understand. But
we weren't members of it until after we joined the EU, were we?
I don't know the detail on that. I'm not gonna.
I'm pretty sure we only joined it after the EU. And in fact,
it's another one of these.
I think we only joined it after Thatcher, if I remember correctly.
I think it's another one of these things that we kind of set the ball rolling on for Europe, because Europe was a nightmare for us and we wanted to be able to ignore it, and it kept causing us problems. So, you know, it's one of these things we set in motion for the continent, and we were never really meant to be involved in it. You know, we've got our own take on human rights, and that's all that's important for us. Why do we need?
I don't believe in. I actually don't believe in human rights at all. I think there are things you get given, like, you know, the freeborn Englishman stuff, which you get from tradition and history. But I don't believe in rights as such at all.
Oh, I mean, human rights is just it's like the modern version of divine right of kings.
Yeah. Don't disagree there at all, Alman. Yeah. I like the whole old stuff of, you know, a freeborn Englishman could do this, and this. And basically a freeborn Englishman could do anything so long as it was not directly against the law. And that has totally changed now, where they want to try and, like, say, oh no, only this is legal. I mean, look at that poor bloody
They want to define what is legal rather than define what is illegal.
Yeah, because that's, like, much broader. In the old days, you could do anything in Britain if it wasn't specifically told to you you couldn't. So that, like, a freeborn Englishman, let's say even in the late 19th century, could do most things. If he wasn't directly endangering and harming his neighbours, and it wasn't directly in British law against the law, you could do it. It's completely different today, which is why we had, like, all those cops arresting that old British Army veteran the other week for reposting a meme.
Oh, by the way, that police force, I believe, the Hampshire police force have now, I mean, someone just linked this to me like an hour ago. They've dropped their hate crime awareness courses that they were offering that guy.
Yeah.
They haven't just dropped it from giving it to him. They've dropped it as a policy.
Good.
Well, good. That's a win then. That's a little tiny.
I did notice on Twitter, like, every tweet they were making about anything was just getting ratioed by people posting that pride swastika at them.
Which I listen. I don't particularly like.
Well,
Lawrence
again,
Fox, but he was clever. He was clever in spotting that. He really was.
You have to bear in mind that the posting of the pride swastika is not actually against the law. What is against the law is if someone takes offence to it. That's the Communications Act.
Yeah.
that's a ridiculous law, John.
I know.
I'm sure you will agree.
But this is why whenever
take
anyone's
offence
talking,
all the time.
whenever anyone's talking about this stuff and they're saying, "Oh, it shouldn't be this way. The police shouldn't act like this." They're only acting like this because it's in law. You need to repeal the law. The Communications Act. I can't remember which section it is, 127 or something like that. It needs scrapping. It needs to go. You should not be criminalising stuff that is not criminal in any other sphere of society. You know, it wouldn't be illegal for me to sit at a table with someone and show them a picture of it, but if I post it online and they take offence there, that's suddenly illegal. And this is the problem with the online harms bill, which Nadine Dorries is trying to bring in. It explicitly criminalizes stuff that is legal in other, spheres of society, and that's a problem.
Well, I had my usual look at the Bias Brainwashing Corporation before we started the stream. And I was talking to Mitch earlier about all of the LGBTQ, mass immigration, and feminist stuff that the BBC puts up all the time, constantly. One of the things was that, hang on, I've lost my train of thought here. So one of the things is that they went on about some protesters who went to a Liz Truss meeting. Didn't tell you what the protesters were about. Just went on about protesters are bad. And if those people had been watermelon green protesters, the BBC wouldn't have given a shit. They would have supported them.
Well, that's what happened over the weekend, didn't it? There were people protesting, saying, we need a Green New Deal, blah blah blah.
But the BBC didn't even say what the protesters were doing because they want more censorship, but they don't want to say what they want censorship for because obviously that would be like anything on the right. That's the point I'm trying to make, John. Like if they'd have been these people, I don't even know what these people were protesting about because the BBC wouldn't allow you to see what it was. Do you see what I mean?
Well, if it's the hustings at Eastbourne, then it was the whole Green New Deal. You need to do more for climate change, blah blah blah.
Okay, fair enough, and that's what I thought it was probably about. But the BBC in their article don't tell you that, or
it turns out, of course, all these kids are globetrotters who love their holidays abroad, spewing CO2 into the atmosphere from their
half of them are not even British.
Oh no, they weren't. Of course, they never are.
Oh, okay. But my point, John,
and the most amusing thing was that someone in the audience said, "Take your foreign ideology back where it came from." Basically, get out of the country.
Good. But my point is, the BBC didn't tell you what that process was, and they deliberately made sure you couldn't even read the signs they were holding up because what they were doing was they were trying to say, "Oh yeah, we do need." Because that's what Liz Truss went on to speak about. We need to stop people protesting. Because, a lot of protests these days in these years of lockdowns and all the rest of it are actually against what is sometimes called the cathedral, shall we say. And I think that was why the BBC was doing that in that way. It's like, every time the BBC say, a man was arrested for, assaulting a child or a little
local
girl.
Man. Local man.
Sometimes local man, yeah. Whenever they do that, you can guarantee he wasn't white. 99% of the time, he wasn't white when they do that. If they name him and say it was Fred Smith, then you're all right.
Yeah, I do. I do find it amusing when crimes happen and they'll post like a description of the criminal or whatever to help people identify. And it's notably absent whenever they're not ethnically English, Celtic, whatever.
Yeah. If they're not Anglo-Celtic, then it will be man, or as you say, local man, no name, nothing. Yeah. And this is just becoming so obvious, and it's been becoming so obvious for so long. It's just insane, really. So none of us think that anyone's going to get us out of the European Court of Human Rights.
No, don't see it.
I don't. It depends who ends up in cabinet when Liz Truss wins. There were the likes of Suella Braverman who were talking about coming out of it, and if they get anywhere near high office in cabinet, it's possible, but I don't expect it to happen, though.
I don't believe a word she says anyway, to be honest.
Yeah, I have my doubts, I got to say.
I mean, she talked about cultural Marxism a few years back, which I thought, well, okay, based, maybe one to watch, but yeah, she just kind of votes along the party whip lines 90% of the time.
Well, I mean, again, you've got to understand the principle of collective responsibility. If you look at all the cabinet members, they will vote along the lines, because once it's decided in cabinet, that is the course of action that they have to take. But that doesn't mean that they're not opposed to it behind the scenes. That doesn't mean they don't make the case against it in cabinet.
Yeah.
Richard Ford.
You notice it most when they come out of cabinet and they get a chance to vote freely, and you do start seeing them vote against various things.
Richard Ford in the chat says, red meat bullshit, can't believe you believe it. I don't believe it, Richard Ford. I mean, some people may, but I don't. But, okay. I brought it up as an interesting point, not that I particularly believe it. And like John knows, I was not a Suella Braverman supporter, unlike many people in his Discord. Not all, but some.
I'll have to shoot anyway. I've actually gone well past the time I was going to stay on till.
All right, we have one more subject to bring up before we go, Adam.
I'll hang on to that then.
Just in case you wanted to say anything about it. Now, John spoke about this on a stream he did himself last week, but I wanted to bring it up. Sir Thomas Picton, General Sir Thomas Picton, who was a war hero of Britain, one of Wellington's most trusted generals and one of the best British generals in the Napoleonic Wars, is now being counselled largely by non-British people. And of course, he's also a big hero of Wales because he was a Welshman. So I just thought, and Adam, you go first if you need to go, mate. What do we think about this?
They've been after him for a while, though, haven't they?
Yeah, it's been going on 18 months at least, yes.
Well, there was a story even further back than that where they renamed a Welsh pub called the Lord Picton.
To let anyone in the chat who doesn't understand know, Picton, before he was a general in the Napoleonic Wars, in the Peninsular War, and then got killed leading a counter-attack against Napoleon at Waterloo, Picton was the governor of a West Indian island. And there was a slave rebellion on this island, and they were killing people, as rebels do. And Picton allowed a few slaves to be killed, surprisingly enough.
But didn't he also not have that much? Didn't he also not have that much authority over it anyway?
No, not really. He asked, like he had a few of these rebels who came up in front of him, and he said, "Well, what do I do with these people?" And they said, well, this used to be a French island. And our legal
system was do this. Yeah.
Our legal system is still this. And Picton said, well, okay, I guess we got to do that now. Because he was the governor. He wasn't like controlling day-to-day stuff.
At a period in time where Britain was very keen not to impose Britain upon its colonies, if you like.
And also just after the Haiti stuff had happened, where like white men, women and children in Haiti were raped and killed and chopped into little bits by the slaves.
Yeah, and look at that island now.
Yeah, and Haiti is so wonderful now.
People should check out the Thomas Carlyle essay on that, which I won't name here.
Yeah. But I mean, Haiti's great. This is the place that makes makes dirt
White
things.
pies.
They make dirt bread or something, which is basically 90% dirt. Not lying. It's true.
Yeah,
It's got
and of course they'll bring up that it was because they had to pay reparations to France or something. But actually,
which they never did.
No,
Never did.
and the fees they had to pay to France per capita were less than the bloody war debt that Germany incurred from the First World War. But they went on to pay most of that back and do a full recovery. So
yeah. So anyway, Picton was there in this very difficult situation, and went along with what the law of the island he was governor of was.
it was a good law.
Well, I mean, look, if I lived on an island and slavery rebels were trying to kill me, I'd kind of like the governor to not let them do that. But whatever. But he was a war hero. He was killed at Waterloo, leading a counterattack against Napoleon. Like when I was a little kid, if you went to the National Army Museum in Chelsea in London, one of the main things you would see in the Waterloo Gallery was Picton's top hat with a blood-stained hole in it, where he was shot in the head and killed. He's a war hero. He's a Welsh hero, and they've removed they've moved his statue in Brecon, and from one of the major Welsh museums, they've taken his a full-size painting of him to one side, and put a load of stuff underneath it about how somehow or another he supported slavery.
Yeah,
it's appalling, and it's just crap, man. It's just nonsense. I don't know. So Adam, you need to go. So if you've got anything to say on that, go ahead.
No, I think I've said my piece. It's disgusting. A lot of Welsh people seem to be kind of a little bit up in arms about this, or as much as Welsh people would be up in arms about anything. So that's kind of
that's good.
Yeah, but not enough. But again, what power can we really wield to bring these people to bear?
But this is it's like John said earlier. It's the 20% of non-British people who live in Britain these days who are causing this. It's not.
I mean, there was a British politician who once quoted a constituent as saying that there'll basically come a time in this country where the whip hand will be held by it won't be held by the British, if you like.
I think that was Enoch Powell, wasn't it?
Oh, was it? Oh, sorry.
I think it was.
But it seems to be that way when British heroes, British folk heroes, are being cast aside as some kind of villains, and
Well, look, Wellington probably wisely didn't trust all that many of his generals. One of the generals he did trust was Picton, because he knew Picton would always carry out his orders to the best of his ability. He was a very brave. Picton was a very brave man. I mean, he was killed at the head of his troops in front of them.
I mean, but imagine trusting a racist. Why would Wellington do that?
Well, I think that every British man up to at least 1945 and probably slightly beyond that was actually racist in the.
That's why they've got to be cancelled. Ben Iron Duke, you can't have it anymore.
Well, there you go. I totally agree. I totally disagree with that, but
you've got to promote the values that we've diversified into.
Yeah, sorry, totally disagree. One reason I started this channel is because I don't agree with that at all.
We need to celebrate people like Winnie Mandela and flaming tire necklaces or whatever.
And if you ever want to look into Winnie Mandela, he was a very evil bitch, by the way. Go and look up a little black African kid called Stompy McKetsy, who she had killed. She had him killed, and he was like, I don't know, 9, 10 years old, something like that.
I'm sure it was just for equality or something. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this 9, 10-year-old little African boy definitely deserved to die at the hands of Winnie Mandela's personal bodyguards. Sure he did.
But Duke, Coca-Cola supported Mandela. Like, what more do you need?
I don't even like Coke, to be honest, but yeah, all right.
Anyway, I'll head off. I'll talk
Yeah,
to you later.
go on, mate. Go on.
Yeah,
Thank you
good
very
night.
much. Thank you for coming on, Adman. And if there's anything you want shilled in the description, just put it in the Discord, mate.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm fine.
See you,
All right. Yep. See you later.
It was interesting when Sadiq Khan's Transport for London. I can't remember exactly what they did. It was change the names of the tube lines to various black people for like Black History Month or whatever. Yeah, it was just it wasn't a permanent thing. It was like Black History Month kind of thing.
Okay.
And if you researched into a number of these people, they ended up being, not very nice individuals. And it's interesting what white people will get cancelled for that gets brushed under the rug for our diverse population, shall we say?
I don't know. I just wish. Like, I know there are a small proportion of lefty Anglo-Celtics who support this ship, but they are a relatively small proportion. And I just wish the real majority would stand up and say, don't do this. We won't let you do this. I really just wish. I don't understand it. Like, by any standards of anyone in the world, General Sir Thomas Picton was a war hero. He led some of the greatest and bloodiest battles in the Peninsular War. And like I said, he got killed running a counter-attack against Napoleon himself at Waterloo in 1815 in front of his troops, leading them on. Can't do anything braver than that, for God's sake. Yeah. If anyone watches the movie Waterloo, by the way, which is not a bad movie, Sir Thomas Picton is played by we were talking about this before we went online. Jack Hawkins. It's one of his last roles, and he's excellent in it. He's really good. It's a good movie anyway. Go and watch it. But the way Picton gets killed in that film was exactly the way he actually did get killed. And like I said, when I was a teenager, if you went to the National Army Museum in London, his top hat, because he didn't have his uniform with him at Waterloo, so he wore civilian clothing, and he had a top hat, and he was shot through the forehead and killed.
And I think
that was in the forefront of the museum.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. His portrait was in this kind of Welsh equivalent of the National Museum kind of thing, and in a very prominent place. And now they took him down for a while, and I think now they have put it back up, but it's in a side room, and it's it basically looks like it's in a shipping container, and they've got some kind of. I was reading. I don't know if it was a Guardian article or something, because I take part in Harrian's laugh. No, it was for Harrian's The Other Side of the Hill stream, and they've got him in what looks basically like a shipping container, and then they've got this plank of wood across his quote bulging groin area. It's such a bizarre, like, cult-like behavior. I don't understand the animus behind it.
Yeah, no, it is insane. George in the chat says there's no means for the majority to express its opinion because the system is constructed in order to ignore majority opinion. Totally agree, George. Totally agree. And that link 555 that George has just put in the chat is probably the movie. So go watch it. But yeah, because you certainly can find Waterloo on YouTube. It's and it's a good film. It has it's not entirely accurate, but it ain't bad. It ain't bad. You haven't said much for a while, Mitch. We're gonna finish up shortly. You got anything to add to stuff?
No, I can't say I've got anything to add to the whole Picton getting depersoned by the prevailing orthodoxy of our time, shall we say.
Well, I think I'd prefer to call it, as John said earlier, the 20% infiltrators that we have these days, and a very small minority.
I mean,
of Anglo-Celtic people.
How long do you think it is before people like Wellington start being demonized for his his involvement in the oppression of India during the empire? And
that'll be next. That'll be next for sure. Look, the slippery slope is real. We've seen this for many years now, haven't we? The slippery slope is a real thing. If you say all right to Picton, and I would say Picton is not known to most ordinary people in the way that, say, Wellington or Nelson is.
Well, were.
Well, actually,
I don't know about you. People. I never got taught anything about Wellington or Nelson in school during those 11 years, 12 years of school.
Well, I'm a bit older than you, and we got a little bit of Nelson and even less of Wellington, but we did get a little bit, but not much.
But that's the point, though, isn't it? You're growing up with a generation of people who know absolutely nothing about these heroes of British history, other than the negative stuff they're told after the fact, if you like.
Yeah,
they don't know anything.
Britain in World War II was almost as bad as the Nazis.
They don't know anything about Picton other than the fact he had some involvement on this island with a slave population. They won't know anything about Wellington other than the fact he brutally put down Indian uprisings and so on. And that'll be how they get rid of him. They won't be taught anything about the Peninsular War. They won't be taught anything about, his status as a British hero, about his abilities as a PM. They won't be taught anything like that. They'll just be taught he did the brown man bad.
Yeah. Lee Ham in the chat says, has Wellington not already been demonized because he was called the Iron Duke because he had put iron shires on his house? Yeah, well, even that was by lefties, to be honest.
Yeah,
even that was done by lefties, and the Iron Duke stayed in his house with a gun and dared the mob to do what they wanted, and they didn't do much.
A couple of times he fell foul of the rags like the Times, and there was storms whipped up out of nothing, and yet he was probably the most well attended. His was probably the most well attended funeral ever in the United Kingdom.
Well, all right, there's two things I'd say about Wellington. Obviously, I like Wellington because I wouldn't use him for my avatar if I didn't. But there's two things I would point out about Wellington. One is that Wellington is often quoted as saying the British soldiers were the scum of the earth. Yeah, everyone knows that Wellington that Wellington quote. They're the scum of the earth. But no one ever repeats the second bit of it. Whereas what Wellington really
said... What a fine bunch of men we've made of them,
Yeah, he said, they're the scum of the earth. They all enlisted for drink and blah, and blah, and blah. And then he turns around and says, but it's wonderful, the fine fellows that we have made them. He also turned around and said, like everyone knows, that he said his army at Waterloo was an infamous army. But he also said the army he had in the Peninsular War, much of which, by the way, got sent to America. Where it saved Canada and burnt Washington and all sorts of other stuff, beat the Americans all over the place. But the second battalions he had in Waterloo were an infamous army. But of the army, and also lots of Dutch and German troops who, within 18 months before, had been fighting for Napoleon. So he couldn't rely on them, which is why he had to mix them with his British troops. But he said of his Peninsular War army that with that army, he could go anywhere and do anything. And the other thing I would say about Wellington that people don't know is that all through his later life, after 1815, after the Battle of Waterloo, he always had 1 or 2 guineas in his pocket, in his waistcoat pocket. He kept always 1 or 2 guineas in cash that he would give to any real veteran of his he met who was in distress. Like, he might ask the bloke, where did you serve, what regiment, which is fair enough because you don't want to help a con, because there were plenty of them. But if the bloke was a real veteran, he would give them a guinea or sometimes even 2 guineas. And a guinea was most of a month's pay for a British soldier back then. It wasn't a tiny little bit of money, you know? So Wellington was nowhere near as bad a man as many people think he may have been. And he was also the guy, by the way, who allowed Catholics to serve officially as officers in the British Army and the Royal Navy. They had done unofficially for many years, but he allowed them to do so officially.
Yeah, he's an interesting character because under his tenureship as PM, there's a number of kind of he charts what could have been a very difficult course through a period where, you know, you're seeing many of the monarchs and governments of Europe in complete turmoil, and he's probably undercredited with being the PM that manages to steer British government and British monarchy through that relatively intact.
Well, he always said he was the monarch's man.
Yes, yeah.
And he always tried to guide the monarch, who were not always the wisest people.
No, he wasn't dealing with some of them, particularly the monarch's relatives, brothers, so on.
Yes,
not the wisest of people.
They weren't always the brightest tools in the shed, shall we say? But he did always manage to guide them into kind of the right direction. So I like Wellington. To me, he was the best British general in history.
I think he's probably as close as one might get to the complete package of sort of soldier, statesman, and you know.
Yeah. I mean, before Waterloo, he beat almost every single one of France's marshals of France. And then at Waterloo, he beat Napoleon himself, which no one else would have done, I don't think.
No, probably not in the British Army.
But yeah, I just think he was a great bloke. Anything to add to that, Mitch?
No, I can't say I've got anything to add.
All right, guys.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I was watching like a Thomas Cochrane video earlier, so I might share that in the history tab.
Oh, Cochrane's cool. Yeah, Cochrane's a really cool admiral. Really good.
Yeah, I'll share that in the history tab on Discord, but something I got nothing to say.
All right, man. Anything you would like to share, Mitch?
Can't say that I have.
I think, John, you probably have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think I've sent you the link before for the Discord invite for that. But yeah, you're welcome to put that in the description again.
I will, mate. It might not be for a couple of hours because I'm going to sleep.
No, but people are more than welcome to join the my own Discord, which is quite interesting, growing.
And you've got a new series
also,
coming up
so
project.
For the Wellington project, we're working on a number of sort of new YouTube series. So people may or may not know Harry or Harrian. He is now doing a weekly news stream for us on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. And
is that the other side of the hill?
The other side of the hill, and I am bringing my Publish and Be Damned series under the Wellington Project banner, and we are starting afresh with the Stoics, and I've just released the kind of introductory video for that, which kind of talks about the history of Stoicism and the kind of the 3 people whose books we're going to be going through
John,
the next sort of 6 months.
John, can you put the Discord link right now in my Discord? Because someone
Yes.
in the chat wants it, and I'll stick it in the chat.
Bear with me.
I will put all this stuff in the description later on, chaps, but wait a sec and I'll stick John's Discord link.
2 seconds. I've just gotta get to it because I can't do it through the Discord app.
Yeah, no worries.
That to do this.
We'll wait a minute. We're going to play out of a tune in a minute anyway.
Where is it? There we go. There's the Wellington project, and there's the pinned tweet. So.
Jostic Draco says Georgie Porgy's bad reputation is a bit undeserved. Maybe. Not sure about that one, mate.
Right. I've got the link.
There were some pretty dodgy chaps around as British king when Wellington was like Prime Minister and high up in British government.
Right. I'm just putting it in your general.
That's fine, man. Yeah. Got it. Okay, I'll stick it in the chat. Wait 1 second. You can probably do it. I just don't know if I've made you able to do that yet. So I'll do it. Here you go. This is the Discord for John and the Wellington project. That has just gone up there.
Thank you very much.
No worries. All right, guys, I'm going to play us out of a tune.
Sound at home again, let the waters roar, Jack, safe and sound at home again. Let the waters roar, Jack. Long we've tossed on the rolling main, now we're safe ashore, Jack. Don't forget your old shipmate, rolly, 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 ride-o. Since we sailed from Plymouth Sound, 4 years gone or nigh, Jack, was there ever chummies now, such as you and I, Jack? Long we've tossed on the rolling main, now we're safe ashore, Jack. Don't forget your old shipmate, folly, rolly, 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 ride-o. We have worked the Southern Sun, ordered deck division, sponger I and loader you, through the whole commission. Long we've tossed on the rolling main, now we're safe ashore, Jack. Don't forget your old shipmate, folly, rolly, 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 ride-o. Oftentimes have we laid out, toil no danger fearing, tugging out the flapping sail to the weather rearing. Long we've tossed on the rolling main, now we're safe ashore, Jack. Don't forget your old shipmate, folly, rolly, 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 ride-o. When the middle watch was on and the time went slow, boy, who could choose a rousing stave? Who like Jack or Joe, boy? Long we've tossed on the rolling main, now we're safe ashore, Jack. Don't forget your old shipmate, folly, rolly, 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 ride-o. There she swings an empty hulk, not a soul below now. Number 7, starboard mess, Mrs. Jack and Joe now. Long we've tossed on the rolling main, now we're safe ashore, Jack. Don't forget your old shipmate, folly, rolly, 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 ride-o. But the best of friends must part, fair or foul the weather. Hand your flipper for a shake, now a drink together. Long we've tossed on the rolling main, now we're safe ashore, Jack. Don't forget your old shipmate, folly, rolly, 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 ride-o. Long we've tossed on the rolling main, now we're safe ashore, Jack. Don't don't forget your old shipmate. Folly, rolly, 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 ride on.
Okay, that was a traditional Royal Navy song, which, as Lady of Shalott mentioned in the chat, is actually featured in Master and Commander. I got two things I want to show just before I stop. First of all, on Tuesday the 9th of this month, so a couple of days, I have a stream with Red Hawk and Andy Nowicki, which is going to be looking at incels and how we can maybe help them to find girlfriends and this kind of stuff. So that might be interesting. And then on the 25th of this month, I'll have part 2 of the stream with Ataman and Horus and myself on Churchill, Hitler, and the Unnecessary War, which is really a stream about Britain between 1919 and about 1942, to be honest. Spindley, yes. Red Hawk and Andy Nowicki will be on that stream together with me on Tuesday. And I will be putting that up fairly soon, like in advance, so you'll be able to find it. But what you guys need to do is make sure you subscribe to the channel and also like the video, and then you won't miss anything that's coming up. Anyway, go well, folks, and I will see you in a couple of days with Red Hawk and Andy Nowicki. Go well.